Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being on this meeting with us. My name is Ginger Leopoldo. I'm the artistic director for CIRCA Pintig. CIRCA stands for the Center for Immigrant Resources and Community Arts, and Pintig means pulse or heartbeat in Filipino. We are an arts organization that's been around for, we're celebrating our 29th anniversary this year. And in the past several years, we have had this wonderful partnership with Dr. Roooshey Hasnain at UIC, and we have partnered on a great project that is called Silencing Stigma, Reclaiming Life. And we're looking at mental health in the Asian American community, and it's been a great way to get students to be involved in their community through outreach and stories. And we have put these stories together up on stage, and it's just a pleasure to have you here taking part in a new chapter of the project. So thank you for being here. This is also part of the social justice work that we do. And yes, we definitely want to be able to tell stories that are not often heard. And a big goal and vision of ours is to have the community speak about and create dialogue around certain issues that are important for our communities. And of course, yes, DHD 420 has been the course that we have recently partnered with. Myself, DHD 400, of course, we've had the wonderful opportunity to work with a team of Capstone scholars with DHD 400, and they have helped to propel the project into new ways. Last year, we were able to host on-campus activity that shared some of the stories that was produced from the DHD 420 course. And this term, we have decided to take to technology and see how we can have even a broader outreach by creating a podcast and a series of interviews that's around mental health and the immigrant experience and Asian Americans and social justice. So again, these projects wouldn't be what they are without the commitment of Dr. Hasnain and also of our students, not only in DHD 420, but definitely our capstone scholars. So they are here to kind of help figure out a good way for us to start having a way to document, I guess, and also share these stories for even more engagement and dialogue.
We'll just jump straight into it if we're ready. So you've talked about your experience coming over from Japan as an immigrant to study here in Chicago at UIC, and your experiences navigating the healthcare system in the USA versus Japan, and kind of the differences in how they treat and think about and handle cases of mental health. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that and your experiences coming from Japan.
Yeah, for me, it's really like mixed feeling and mixed like reaction about the mental health experience in the state, because I think I mentioned about it before, but when I was in Japan, I also like my condition was same. I have a depression, I have an anxiety, I have a PTSD, I have a suicidal thoughts, and but we don't talk about it at all. But when we say like, oh, I want to kill myself, or I'm super depressed and I feel like I want to kill myself, I cannot resist. They were like, okay, don't kill yourself on the train, or don't jump off the from the building. If you want to die, just go ahead and go to the place that's quiet and don't like distract other people. Like they actually like say those kind of things on the joke hand. So like for me, like saying, oh, I want to kill myself is like a regular conversation when I grow up. So like I was surprised when I first time met with a therapist, and I said, like she asked me whether I used do you have a like plan to kill yourself, or like do you want to kill yourself? And I said yes, and then I got hospitalized. And I was like, um I'm same shape as I have been 18 years like living with this condition, and why I'm being in the hospital. That was like huge question mark for me. And afterwards was admitted to the hospital, I was notified that in the States, if you say those kind of things, you're gonna need to be in the hospital like to for your own safety. And like, okay. And then but at the same time, then I cannot ask for the help because I'm so afraid to forced to be in the hospital. So like I don't know whether it's good or not. I feel like I cannot talk about my mental health after I moved here more than in Japan, because they have many laws that like protect their own safety, so that like I can like I feel like I need to tell my positive things to the therapist to not to be hospitalized, because like I already been hospitalized 5 times in this 2 years, and at the psych unit, and it's not fun. And all the freedom and all the belongings will be like is not there, and I feel like it's carcerating me. And I never had those experience in Japan. Like even though I attempt my suicide like multiple times in Japan, but they didn't put me in the psych, they just put me in the antidepressant meds. And so I feel like I can reach out for the help at the moment, but I feel like at the same times I am doing better because in Japan we don't talk about other than suicide ideation, like about how I feel as a depression and stuff. And when I say something, people say it's just because you're weak. It's in your head. Like, don't say it. It's shame. Like we have those culture aspect that we shouldn't tell we're depressed, or we we don't have a word depressed. Like we have a depression, the diagnosis name of depression, but we don't have a word depressed. So like it's kind of hard to say that I'm down. That's the I think the English and translating to Japanese I'm down, but
Mm-hmm.
we say that we shouldn't say that words because that makes other people negative and showing the weakness, and that's not allowed in my culture.
So it sounds like there's this mix of pros and cons,
Mm.
better or worse systemic qualities between the two countries.
Yes, for the healthcare provider, I feel like US is more um, scary and stigma. Like healthcare professional is making individual and society more stigmatized by like forced hospitalization, or like
Mm-hmm.
um, fear of hospitalization, or the word psych and crazy is kind of connected.
Mm-hmm.
And like it makes like you cannot tell others that like if I'm in the psych wards, like you lose your cell phone, and like I need to reach out to other people, but I couldn't because I couldn't tell anyone when I was in the hospital. And I'm from Japan, so I need a help to bring my clothing or like stuff. But first, when I was in the admission, it took 21 days to get out. But I didn't have any family. I couldn't tell my friends. So like, because I had a culture that I shouldn't tell those stuff to others. So like I need to deal everything by myself, and like figuring out those kind of aspect was like kind of hard for me. Especially in Japan, family takes care of family, and not the medical professional takes care of others. So that aspect was kind of like I feel like I'm getting help, but at the same time, I feel like isolation at the hospital. So like, I feel like those like weird like culture differences, and like like I felt a lot of shame on myself. I think that's like the like strongest feeling that I remember since I moved here about my mental health situation.
So you feel that even though we have a cultural understanding that mental health cases should be treated, and we're open about that aspect, that there's still this dimension of stigmatization that happens in this country.
Yes, I think so. And I think the biggest thing is like media and a lot of things portrayal like um, the people who have a mental health issues as a crazy or like dangerous kind of thing, and that's creating stigma. And but if you add that with the Asian culture, it's like you cannot tell others, but you also have a stigma living in the States with the mental health situation. So it's like you're getting two different kind of pressures. And even my parents don't know about it. It's gonna be public, I know, but even though my parents don't understand like my mental health issues, and my parents, when I first was like diagnosed with a major depression disorder, what my parents said was, "You haven't tried enough." That was the response. That is a culture that you should do. Like if you try better, like you don't feel like it, like you don't have any efforts to be better person, and like you're just trying to be weak. And that, I think those kind of like culture, and like it's shame, so don't talk about it to others, and like try to hide everything. So like those kind of aspect is kind of like still it's kind of hard to shift to it, to the like different perspective. Is I think it's like time processing and like learning processing for me.
Yeah, it's this really tough situation of these compounding identities, right? And these cultural experiences you're having, trying to handle how we do things, with this baseline understanding culturally from your background that it's kind of conflictual, the two things. Um, though it's true, of course, that we're still not good in this country about talking about that kind of stuff. We're getting better, and I would say we were definitely less interior about it than it sounds like Japan might be. In recent years, we've made pushes and initiatives to, publicly campaign for these issues, but it's still very much a work in progress. Which I really appreciate you talking about this stuff, because it's really not talked about in public a lot of the times.
Yeah, and also I have also autistic, and when I have a autistic meltdown, I cannot verbally communicate with others. And once I was at the downtown, overstimulated and had a meltdown. The person who saw me called the police, and then the police came, and when they saw me, they thought I having a psychosis, and they like put me to the in the police car and just dragged me to the um, hospital. And I directly went to the psych unit, but I just needed a safe space and quiet space, and that's the only thing I can recover. But like, psych unit is loud, like it's not helping me at all. So it took more recovery time, and it's kind of like having like, oh, this person is not functioning, so let's give this person to the mental health like psych unit. And like those kind of like hard to explain part kind of thing is also like individualized American culture that I was surprised that like how police deal with the situation.
For those of us who may not be familiar or know much about the experience of people in hospitals, could you talk a little more about what it's like being in the psych ward at the hospital?
Yeah, basically, I been to the psych only for um, the not only but suicide attempt or suicide ideation or mental health, autistic meltdown. But basically, they put a yellow gown, which shows that there are risked for a rope at ER. So then like all the nurses can know that from the gown that this person is a psych patient, even though you're ICU or step down unit or like for other medication treatment. And then you eventually go up to the psych unit, and then know like when you get into the psych unit, other than psych stuff, psych hospital stuff, um, no other healthcare provider can go in other than like it's locked down. So basically, you get in and you transfer to the bed, and they strip search, and then they check all the scars um, to know that like while I'm there, whether it's safe or not, like whether I'm not hurting myself or not. So basically, they check and they like put take off all my belongings. So like I just need to sign what I had in my bag and stuff, and they lock everything down. And then in my room, I usually have a two camera watching me, and also I have 1-to-1. I never had other than 1-to-1. So basically, in 1 feet distance, always another person watching me, whether I'm not harming myself or not.
Wow.
And that including getting when I'm getting shower, when I'm in the bathroom, they need to open the door and watching me all the time, 24/7, and that's more getting my like mental health worse because that's not like human living, you know. So yeah, those experience living like that made me more hard to recover. Yeah, that's was I surprised. I was really surprised because I feel like I like you lose the sense of you're human kind of thing while you're there because you don't have any dignity at all.
Yeah, you mentioned incarceration. Use that word. It sounds a lot more like that than any kind of care giving service.
Yeah,
It sounds like it really did more harm than good being in that kind of environment.
yeah. but everyone say that's your own safety. That was like, oh, my question is like, what this is like, how this can be my own safety. Like, I feel like I don't feel safe here, but they're like saying that it's just to recover for your anxiety or suicidal thoughts. It will be good to have the people near me. I'm like, yeah, but I want a privacy. And they're like, yeah, but the reason we're doing this because the person in the previous time, couple people tried a suicide while they're watching on the video and they couldn't cut it at the time, kind of stuff. And those kind of incident made those kind of high security on self percussion kind of thing. That's their explanation, but still it's kind of like tough to um survive there, because another thing is, if you like have a bad day within the hospital, they have a we call NPO, which is needed for, I don't know what the short term is. Basically, you get a shot to calm myself down. And basically, if you get shot, you cannot get out at least 5 days within the 5 days. So you need to behave well, not to get a shot to get out to the hospital. So basically, it's kind of like hard, like a lot of pressure that I need to be better quickly, not enough to cause more harm. And especially, I was at UIC. I'm at the UIC, so I need to catch up with the study and everything. And at least they allow me to have a laptop. They say that it's really like special, like to have a laptop, but they allow me to like contact the professors, and like I cannot catch up with the study, so like can I have an extension and stuff. So I was lucky that at least I had a laptop for per day 1 hour, and that was my like only lifeline that I could have other communication with others, um, other than the other patient.
Hearing about how sequestered and insular and prison-like it is even surprising to me as someone, an Asian American who's lived in the U.S. basically my entire life. I don't think these kind of conditions are really. We kind of think of institutionalized, like incarceration-like conditions as kind of a thing of the past, something we don't have to worry or think about anymore. That we've moved past it in a sense. Could you talk about a little more about how uh, conditions like yours would be treated in Japan, and how that compares to these medicalized, incarcerated environments in the U.S.? Are there places like that in Japan? Are there options
Um,
for hospitalization in a similar way?
yeah, so it's interesting. Japanese people have a thing that we call mie. I don't know how to say in English. We have a mie, or we have a term mie or sekente, like to look good and try to bury those mental health issues that as a society and within the family and within the community. So basically, even though you have a symptoms, people try to not to see that. Like even though they see it, they don't. They try to make a face that didn't see it. So like even though your lovers or your kid or the neighborhood are really depressed, first of all, the the person who are depressed try not to show those parts because that's a really shame. And even though they're showing the symptoms, um, other family or society people are trying to ignore those parts and try to bury um, it, and so that no one goes to first of all hospital. And as I mentioned earlier, if they say like really depressed and if they say they want to kill themselves, they just say we it's like really common thing we say in Japan is that if we are really common with the train, it's on time always, and if a lot of time people jump off to kill themselves to the train, then the family get sued, and they need to pay a lot of money to the company because it caused a lot of damage to the people who work. So they need to get a money from their family. So we always say that don't jump off the train. Like you can be selfish, but don't like make more burden to their family. So like if you want to kill yourself, that's fine, but don't do it. Don't jump off the train, as well as if you jump off from the roof. You might gonna kill others, so don't do it. You can hang yourself anywhere, like I would recommend here and there, and like they actually tell you the instruction and stuff, but actually that makes a little bit relief too, like you're actually like I feel like accepting like the way I feel is okay kind of thing. I don't know whether that's only me or not, but that's how our culture is. And but only the thing is schizophrenia. People with schizophrenia have really stigmatized because that is really hard for the family to work and protect and bury and like hide from society. And society, if the society or neighborhood find out they have a schizophrenia, people tend to blame family that they did bad. That's why they have a schizophrenia. Their son is schizophrenia, or sometimes they throw out from the town because they have their kid have a schizophrenia, or their family have a schizophrenia. So our country, the psych unit is 99.9 schizophrenia,
Mm.
and once you get into the hospital, you never get out until you die over there. So also that is showing the Japanese society don't want to show anyone about, they're afraid that people are different and try to hide those part by putting people in the lockdown unit and putting a lot of medication and try to show that they're not aggressive or like they're not like weird by putting so much drug that people cannot get up from the bedside. That's how our Japanese mental health situation is like.
It's interesting to hear how the two countries, there's this shared stigma about it, and it manifests in different ways culturally, but that stigma remains across borders. So you talked a little bit about how, in a sense, it's a positive that it's like in a way accepted as a fact of life in Japan. That there's this kind of sense that it's accepted, but not it's counterintuitive, and for us in America, like very very counter to how we would think about the problem of mental health and mental illness. What would you like to see happen in Japan to change how they approach these issues on an institutional level, culturally? Are you worried about your family, if you were to share this with them, how they would react to it?
Yeah, I think that is the difficult thing. I believe that I still remember when I was in high school, when I had first symptoms and I had attempt suicide. My parents sent me to the different prefectures counselor because they were afraid to show neighborhood or other community that I have a symptoms, and that's really shame. So they sent me to like 3 hours train, like every day for the counseling. But that made really myself ashamed too, like kind of sense of like I'm like different and I shouldn't be with my family. And since then, I never talked about my mental health with my parents or siblings. And also like a lot of term that we have in the US we don't have. Like I think that is the hardest part because we are not good at, first of all, our culture are not good at telling our feelings. We don't have a lot of terms of expressing our feelings. And I think that's also the hardest part of the mental health in our culture because we we don't have so many feelings words. So like, for example, I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm frustrated, and I'm annoyed, and I'm chill, or like those kind of words that we have, but that's it. And they don't have um so much depression or like negative words other than happiness or anger. And even the happiness or anger, we have a culture that we need to be politely express our feelings. So it's kind of be
Yeah.
hard because it depends on whether their age is older, I need to use different term, and
Hmm.
if their age is younger, I need to use different term. And like depends on the age, we need to use a respectful words. So like when even though I'm expressing my feelings to the doctors or the therapist or like my family, I need to use a polite feeling way term, which is I don't know how to explain in English. When they don't have in English that word, so it's also difficult to translate it. But yeah, it's so difficult because when you try to use polite way to express your feelings, it'll be so weird, and it's not like you actually expressing your feelings. You're just telling in a polite way, and it's not true feelings. So I think that's the biggest thing, that it's like you cannot talk my own feelings to my parents itself. And I think that is more hard part.
You've had this culture shock really coming and living in the US. How long have you been here?
When I was 16, went to Colorado for a year, and I came back. And um, since 2 years ago, I moved to Chicago from Japan.
So you've been here a couple of years now. Um, you talked a little bit about the language barrier
Hmm.
and how conceiving these issues just mentally can change depending on the language you're speaking. How has it been for you adjusting to the sense of conceptualizing yourself as a bilingual Japanese American person living in the US? Do you have a sense of pride?
Um, yeah, I feel like I moved, like I'm also mixed. As a background is my parents are mixed, and both my parents are mixed, so I have a multiple race within my family. And it's so interesting that my family have a different culture within the Japanese culture. And so everyone say I'm different outsider. When I was in, like, I was growing up in Japan, I was seen as outsiders, and like had a name called by, like, we had a term outsider by like bullying words, and I was growing up with that words. So I thought I'm like outsider. So if I go to US, I feel like I'm like normal person. Like I can be fit into this like society. But then I moved here and I was outsider of US. I felt like I'm outsider when I moved to US. And the first thing I remember is I was crying just after a week after I moved to Chicago. Is like I felt like I have no place that I fit in. Like I didn't fit into Japan. My roots is also Filipino, so like I went Philippine couple of years ago, but I didn't fit there. And also I have a Jewish background too, so I went to Jewish, but it's not fitting. Like I had like nowhere to fit, and that kind of stuff like made really hard to like find my own identity. But
Hmm.
by studying disability study, I'm like, disability identity is my perfect fit, because that's not like asking whether like, are you from Japan, or are you from what's your background, or that what's your heritage or anything. You can be who you are, and you can be proud of who you are. And that also made my other identity more clear, that no matter like who said what, if I feel I'm Asian, I can be proud of my Asian identity. And that was my huge shift change of my life after I studying at the UIC for like 2 semester. I start having more confidence and pride of myself, that I'm okay with being Asian American identity, and I'm okay with having a disability identity. And that makes that made a little bit the healthcare mental health part too, that I'm okay being depressed, and they have other people who are having same we called mat pride, that people saying they are okay way that they are, they don't want a cure for it. And I think that those kind of like understanding and interacting with I say own people, but like shared experience and shared
Hmm.
identity is the most grateful thing that I came here and could experience. And that is kind of like biggest my safety network that I have for not being hospitalized and stuff. Or even I get hospitalized, they're willing to come and like take care of me too. So like that's the um yeah, biggest thing that I gained in this 2 years.
That's great to hear. That's fantastic. I'm glad you were able to find that sense of community here. I've had a similar experience going through. We're all students in disability studies, and thinking about my own identity in relation to the topics we talk about has been really eye opening and really changed how I think about myself. What advice would you have for people who are struggling with issues surrounding mental health? People coming from different countries, trying to adjust to life and the new culture. What resources are available to them?
Oh my God, that's difficult question.
Yeah.
Because I'm still figuring out too. Because I still remember the first semester. Within a couple weeks, I was really down, and my one of the DHC courses TA is like, I think you need, yes, you have a community, but I think you need to see a counselor. And she guided me to the counseling center at the UIC. And when I first went there, they said they cannot see me, and I'm like, why? And she said, the counselor said that because your health condition is complex, and also you're from different countries, so we need to have an interpreter, and that will be better if I go to hospital. And I was like, okay, I guess the free counseling center is not available to me.
Hmm.
So they refer me to the NPI, which is neuropsych a patient institute at UIC. So I go to UI hospital, and I still had a hard time navigating with the therapist, because she was really judgeful that some of the PTSD or experience is the culture thing, and that's like, people say that's trauma, but I don't feel that's trauma. Like in Japanese society, father is the strongest person, and we need to follow what he says. And that's not how do you say, abuse or anything.
Hmm.
For me, my perspective is that's no norm like for us. But when I talk about it, she makes a face that I'm been through like huge trauma, and I'm like, No, that's not trauma at all. And so like those kind of culture differences is like kind of hard to navigate right now, but I asked whether they have an Asian counselor, and now I met counselor who moved from Korea, and so she knows Asian country culture with, even though we're not same country. So like it making a lot of better processing, and also the doctor changed, and if I have some term I cannot explain in English, she call interpreter by phone, and I can get interpreter anytimes. And I think that like knowing the rights that I can change and ask for the, like, maybe they're not available, but like having the same kind of culture um therapist, or like having a, like knowing that I can ask for the like interpreter, like, or like it's okay to ask help within the outpatient clinic and it's not a shame. And I think those kind of things are like really essential for the people who coming from the other country and understanding resources, is to understanding the rights as a patient in the US. It's really hard, but it's, I learned in the like painful way, but still like navigating how to be better way to protect myself from the like more harmful way. But like also I that's I figure out um the best way is to be who I am, and to say I cannot tell this because I'm not good there, have no English that exactly to translate it to English, and I need a professional to actually do this, and can I ask the interpreter? And like knowing that it's okay to do that, like that making more better communication with the mental health provider, and that making a less like stigma as like less stigma to myself, and having a different diagnosis from the mental health provider, because first they misdiagnosis me because they didn't understand what my feeling is and what I'm talking about it. So like I feel like having a, like if you're having a different diagnosis, it's going to be different medication, and that makes more hard. So like knowing having interpreter is, I think it's really strong key essence people who come from different country.
No, you've been very expansive. You shared so much. We really, really appreciate it. So just to wrap up then, so we're in the midst of this unprecedented kind of situation right now. This shelter in place with COVID-19. Um, how are you managing right now?
Oh, so it's really hard since I used to had therapy for once a week and doctor for once a month. But because the COVID-19 UI hospital psych unit got shut down, so
Mm,
I don't have any mental health provider right now, and also because I need a physical assistant as well. And the first week was fine, but in the end on I think last Friday or so, last Friday, I forgot, the state decided to do self shelter order. The UIC encouraged student living in the dorm to go back home. So basically, a lot of my personal care attendant who are also UIC student went back to suburb, which it's hard them to every day come and help me out. So I couldn't get out from the bed from Friday night to Saturday morning because I had no one that could cover their shift, which was kind of like fine since like it was weekend and I wanted to sleep a lot, but still like I was afraid how long this gonna be and what can I do for getting help. And especially like who from the different country, the resources is a little bit different. We don't get traditional resources or like a support as American citizens. So those part like getting contact with other people who live in the Chicago who are immigrants or like non-citizens to get reach out and like asking those questions and asking a disabled lawyer that who know more resources and like the how we can go. And also the Equip for Equality is doing super grateful thing, and I called them and they are negotiated with the DHS, and I also reach out with the DRC at UIC and they post the job description for it. And so now I finally got the people who I need for the help, and I think that made a lot of really relief of like living within this like shelter situation. But on the other hand, it's so interesting because everything turned to be online, and it'll be, I don't know why, but for me it's more accessible because I don't physically need to be there, so that my body is not like tired or having fatigue so much, and actually I can attend more events and like more productive. So like I think those, like it's kind of like also mixed feeling that until like figuring out what kind of resources I have was hard, but once you know it, it's kind of like gradually you getting adopted. And also at the same time you can attend more, like you have more access that I haven't had for before COVID-19. So overall I feel like it's better for me. I don't know. I don't want to say it's better for me. I want to finish. I wanted to graduate. I was like, the biggest thing is that the graduation got canceled was the biggest thing. I was like sad, but yeah, I want COVID-19 to go away. But that's the knowing that we can, as a human being, we can still adjust and go seek for different ways that we might can do, and that's gonna benefit a disabled people and disability community. And knowing that is I think a good thing within the COVID-19 situation.
All right, well that's a great note to leave on, I think. Thank you so much, Noah, for talking with us, sharing your experiences today.
Thank you.